God has made you qualified for your position. I think a lot of us in our life, we can get to the point where we think God has forgotten about us, that God has just given up on us. Look at all the pain and the suffering I'm going through. How could God use somebody who's so broken like me, who's so confused, who can't even speak articulately, somebody who has no idea what their purpose in life is? And that's exactly why God uses you. The Bible tells us that God can use a fool to correct a wise man. If you believe you're a fool, that's exactly why God called you. If you think, oh, I'm nothing more than a shepherd, that's exactly why God called you. God does not call the qualified, He qualifies the called. He puts you in that position. He equips you for battle. He says that you are something when everyone else thinks you're nothing. For example, we look at David and we look at how everybody in his family, whether it was his brothers or his father, who thought of him either as just a kid or as their son, and some other people saw him as a nuisance. God saw David as a king. He saw right through that. The Bible tells us that God looks at our heart when He judges us. When He looks at us, He looks at our heart. That's why the Bible tells us to be so careful we let into our heart. Because what a man believes about himself, so he becomes. You become what you think about yourself, and I promise you, you're the harshest critic to yourself. If someone says you're stupid, are you automatically stupid? No. You become stupid because that's how you view yourself. If you think of yourself a certain way, that's how you start to view yourself. That's how we get these narcissists out here that believe, I'm the greatest. But we know it's not true. So what is the truth? The truth is you are seeking out God with all of your heart, and you're so worried that you might not be useful to Him that you are looking for answers, especially with a video like this or reading the Bible. I know in my life, sometimes I feel like, well, I'm not in a position, I don't speak as good as these other people. I don't act the way that some of these other Christians do. I'm not the most devout person in my walk with Him. But I promise you that thief is a comparison of joy. If you keep comparing yourself to everybody else's day 30, you're never going to be able to get past your day 1. Remember, God will qualify you when the time comes. The Bible says in Luke 12:12 that I will speak through you. I will give you what you ought to say. If you don't know what to say in a specific situation, let God speak through you. Let Him be your voice. I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, but I fear no evil, for He is with me. I don't know if I'm going to make it out of the valley, but what I know is that I walk through it. I'm not worried about running through it. I'm not worried about sitting through it. I walk through it because I know that wherever I go, I'm protected. Because greater is He who's within me than he who's of the world. And how do we get to understand that? When we understand that maybe I don't know everything. That's why I'm not going to question it when God calls me. Many are called, but few are chosen. He qualified you. And that's exactly why you worry about these things. That's why you worry about if you still have salvation. That's why you worry about if you still are in that position or if you're good enough for that. Because I promise you, when God puts you in that position, with more comes more. And you're going to see real quick how God changes your position for His kingdom. God's done that for me so much. God's been so good to me that when I was in positions where I didn't know how I was going to make it out, God made a way out. Right? You're looking right and you're looking left. You forget that God's outside the dimension. He looks through and He sees an outcome you don't. Because think about it. Sometimes you got to go through a situation to look back on it eventually and be like, I needed to go through that to be the person I am today. That's how God made me somebody so great for His kingdom. It's the same thing with Moses, the same thing with Noah, the same thing with David, same thing with Jonah. When he didn't want to do nothing. Think about that. God qualifies the call. Jonah didn't think he was ready for that. He said, oh, you want me to go talk to these people? Like, who do you think I am? You think I'm going to have sway? Why don't you go talk to them? And so he ran away and he went to go on his boat. When he's on his boat, he's riding in his boat and he's going down. And he's like, okay, well, I don't got to listen to God. I'm going to go do my own thing. And so bada bing, bada bang, a big old whale comes to swallow up Jonah for 3 days. And then when he spit back out eventually after surviving that, He goes and he does what God has called him to do, because despite how you feel about a situation, God is going to use you through it. Even though Jonah denied it, God wasn't finished with him yet. As much as God can use a good man to go help out other broken people, God can use an evil man to help a good man be put in that position. God uses everybody. But then you got to come down to the idea, am I going to let God use me, or am I going to have to let God force me to do it? Because I promise you, when you are called, God has great things planned for you. If you don't think you can do it, you fail before you even started. If you can't see yourself in a position of being rich or being famous or being this or being that, you'll never be able to get in those positions in the first place. Not that it's even something that you should be striving for, but just think about it. If you want a higher position in your job because you want to make a little bit more money so you can be comfortable, then remember that you gotta see yourself in a position first. How am I ever going to be a basketball player, man? I don't have this coach, I don't have this, I don't have that. Be content. If it's God's will, it's his will. But if you don't see yourself in the position, you're not going to do anything to get there in the first place. Because if it is God's will and you never did nothing, guess what? Now you're going to be so upset, man, why didn't I ever get that? Why did I ever get out the position? I got a story for you, because this is a very important story to this topic. There was this man, and so he fell off his boat and he was swimming in the ocean. And then a guy in a boat came by and he saw you struggling in the water. He said, hey man, he said, you want me to help you out? And the dude said, nah, God will save me. And so the guy said, all right, bro, and rolled off his boat. Then a few hours later, the guy starts struggling a little more. And the guy comes back around and he says, hey man, you still seem like you're struggling. You want me to save you? And the guy said, nah, bro, I'm good. God gonna save me. Then the man went off again. Then one more time, the guy starts struggling again. And this time he's getting real deep. Like, you know how you start going like this in the water? Like, especially you can't swim. I know my fellas know. But you be like this or something. Like, you got your neck like a little below the water. Anyway, he starts struggling a lot. And so the guy comes back around again and he says, man, come on. I got to leave for today. I just got this big harvest for my family. And I don't want to see a good man die. He said, please. He said, let me save you. And the guy said, I'll be fine. God will save me. And so the guy took off again, and he was sad knowing that the guy may perish. And lo and behold, the guy did perish. And when he went to heaven, he said, God, why didn't you save me? And God said, you fool, I sent that man 3 times to get you out the water. You see how if we perceive a situation and we think that we know something bigger than God's plan, if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And so if God put you in that position, he wants you in that position, and there's nothing in your life pushing you away from it, it probably means that God has prepared you to be in that position. You might not think I'm qualified to go speak to that person, but I'm going to do it anyway. Why? Because I would rather them hear about God than die not knowing who he is. You might be the only Bible someone ever reads, so don't put yourself in a position where you're falling short. Don't say to yourself, I'm not worthy of it. Because God made you worthy. Him dying on that cross was the sign right there. That was the stamp of approval. I have made you worthy of my grace, of my mercy, and of a better position. So, let God use you. Remember, God does not call the qualified, he qualifies the call. Let God continue to qualify you in every aspect of your life. God bless, and I'll see you soon.